Good morning. Welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Thanks for joining me. We are in we are in Mark chapter 13. I'm going to mention a verse from Matthew today, though. We're in Mark chapter 13, day 38 of the Servant Gospel. And in Mark chapter 13, we're reading the Olivet Discourse, but Mark's version of this is a little bit shorter. So because of that, we're going to be careful to look at some other things that seem to implicate that Jesus is talking about the days in which we live quite strongly. We ended yesterday with those verses about betrayal, that even family members in these days might be betraying one another. It said, brother will betray brother to death, a father his child, and this is in verse 12. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. All men will hate you because of me, for he who stands firm to the end will be saved. So we've got this different kind of time in which even family members will betray one another when something is in the way. Some kind of philosophy has divided families, and those who go with Christ are against the others to the point that there is no compromise in between. There's no allowance for this, even to the point that you might betray your own family members to death. We see an attitude going on in the world that's similar to this today. Now, one of the verses that's in the longer version of the Olivet Discourse from the Gospel of Matthew sheds some light on this, I think. It's Matthew 24:12, where Jesus says, because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. Think about that for just a minute. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. And I use this particular version. Some versions say the love of many will grow cold. And some people seem to think that that word in the Greek must mean many as few. A few will have this problem. But no, because it's a stronger word, some translators would use instead this kind of word, most. In other words, a large number of people will discover their love growing cold, their sanctity of life disappears, their love for humanity, their feeling that all humans are worthwhile and should be saved just disappears. And we're seeing that literally taking place all around us today. We just saw the awful events take place in the Compton neighborhood of Los Angeles, in which two police officers were just sitting in their car. And someone comes up to them, they aren't arresting them, they aren't doing anything except sitting in their car, minding their own business, when someone comes up and pulls out a gun and shoots both officers trying to assassinate them. One is a 31-year-old woman, the other a 24-year-old young man, a rookie, and they're both shot. The woman being shot in the face, literally blowing her jaw off. It was awful. Well, then, of course, the EMTs come and to try to save their lives, try to take them to the hospital, and people begin to block the emergency vehicle and try to block the hospital so that the police officers will die. Seriously, this is happening. If you're shocked by it, you haven't been paying any attention to the news, because we have noticed what Jesus said coming true in front of our faces. People who no longer care about life, and lives don't matter, even though they're carrying signs that seem to indicate that. In fact, one of the signs that was present there in Los Angeles said, blue lives, referring to police officers, blue lives don't matter. So it really doesn't matter if you happen to belong to some minority or majority. It doesn't matter if you decide to put on a police officer's uniform, which we used to think was serving your community at a higher purpose. You're there to protect and serve. But if you put on that uniform, all of a sudden your life doesn't matter. People gathered outside that hospital celebrating the fact that these officers were shot, cursing, ranting, and raving, some, hoping and praying that not only will they be shot, but that more of them will be shot. Where have we come from? What happened to us that we got to this point in history? Now, we could talk about some of those social factors, but they are factors predicted by Jesus, predicted by Paul. He said in the last days, perilous times will come. And he talks about how people will lose that love for other folks. They'll be just lovers of themselves. And that all these other things would follow, including all their anger, their bitterness, their hatred, their disobedience to authority, their disobedience to parents. And we're seeing that happen right in front of our eyes. So Family members are going to be betraying one another. It's going to be a time in which wickedness increases. And then Jesus says something else is going to happen. I'm going to read these verses today. I want you to think about them, and we'll talk about the implications tomorrow. But in verse 14, he says, when you see the abomination that causes desolation, standing where it does not belong, then let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. And let no one on the roof of his house go down to enter his house, take anything out. Let no one in the field go back to get his cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Because, of course, carrying a baby along with you is going to be much more difficult. He said in verse 18, pray that this will not take place in winter, because those will be days of distress unequaled from the beginning, when God created the world until now, and never to be equaled again. Jesus is predicting something that many folks call a great tribulation, a time of tribulation that's coming. In other words, all this is building up to an explosion point. And he says you're going to see something. What is he talking about? We'll get to that subject and open it up a little bit tomorrow. What is an abomination that causes desolation? Well, we can see the world and where it's headed. The point is, folks, be on the right side of these two groups. When brother betrays brother, just make sure you're the brother that's standing with Jesus. Make sure that if your family doesn't understand the powerful implications of the gospel and doesn't want to follow the gospel, which says love everyone and everybody in every race, and to share the good news that Christ has died for forgiveness of our sins so that we can be united in a body in the family of God. If folks are against that message, they're against you. Just make sure that's the side you're on, that you're on God's side when the great battle ensues. Keep preaching the gospel. Keep sharing the good news. But friends, when you see people around you that have been caught up in this whole attitude of wickedness and hatred for other people, and they're buying into these political narratives which have been used in the past, and every time they've been used, and it's okay to make life cheap. They're just collateral damage for the revolution. It's okay that a few die, and then hundreds die, and then thousands, and ultimately those societies lost millions when they followed this same Marxist philosophy. Oh, friends, listen, we're in trouble in what was the bastion of freedom in the world, the United States of America. Is it a signal of something that's coming? Most certainly it is. Bad times are coming, tribulation is coming, but ultimately the good sign is Jesus is coming. Keep looking up, keep looking for him, and we'll do this again tomorrow, right here as we wake up in the Word.